All right. So where do you see this going? The trial, I think, has been moved up, moved back. I don't even know where it is right now. But where do you think this is going to go?
I mean, 90% of cases settle, right? So the odds are that this case will settle. I also have to imagine that both sides want to settle this case. They want to get out of the press. They want to stop spending millions of dollars. But this also kind of feels like a really dangerous game of chicken to me. And I
Hmm.
think if the egos were enough to get to where we are, who's going to set aside their ego and settle?
Right.
And so, I still don't think this case will go to trial because I think it can't in so many ways. But on the other hand, every day that goes by, it's more likely to get to trial because once, the damage is being done slowly and slowly and slowly.
And it's not
So,
even that slowly
yeah,
anymore. But
no, you're
I
right.
do agree, but that it's not going to get to trial. However, I think the only way for a settlement to happen is for them to say, okay, we're going to just stop this. No one's going to ask the other one for money, but someone's going to have to admit that they were wrong. So I can see Justin saying, okay, I'll walk away and I'll settle this, but you have to admit you brought this with ill intent or that there was no facts to back it up because you need to clear my name. That's the only way I could see him settling. I feel like he wants this to go to the end to prove himself.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about this. I actually think it is possible Justin Baldoni would settle without an apology because the fact of the lawsuit going away
Oh,
when the public tide is already 95% in his opinion, at least that's what it feels like,
mhm.
might be enough for him to be the hero. Right?
Right.
I think if you just pulled the plug right now, he's won by a lot.
Agreed.
So I could maybe see him agreeing to a settlement without an apology, but I don't know how she does that,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, without any vindication for her claims. She just drops them. Doesn't feel like that's going to happen.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, that'll be very interesting to see where this goes. I'm here for it for sure.
Me too.
All right. Sean Combs, the upcoming trial. That's happening in a few months. Every time you turn around, there's some other cringe-worthy story. What are your thoughts as a lawyer on how this is going to go down? I mean, we already know what the public opinion is, but what are the facts that we're not really paying attention to?
I think the question is how big the scope is going to get
Mm,
because we're constantly seeing new allegations come out, and the prosecutors can still supplement these arguments that they're making. And there's going to be a lot of, I think, fascinating legal issues in terms of how they try this case because you really have to weigh, putting in all the bad evidence, but also not really getting away from the criminal allegations, kind
right.
of the way that, Harvey Weinstein's trials have happened and then been reversed and happened and been reversed. There's so much bad stuff out there that it's going to be really fascinating to see how the case is tried. I see it going to trial. I don't think there is any way this case does not go to trial because I don't think the prosecutors will settle for anything other than the rest of his life in jail.
Right.
I don't think why would he take that when he could take
So,
it?
I mean, what could his defense be beyond he didn't do it and they're all lying?
I think that has to be the defense.
Right.
I mean, they all consented. I mean, there's some
Oh,
kind of hint of, a lot of these parties, they weren't drugged against their will. They were not, they gave their consent to everything that was happening. I mean,
oh, that's a good point that he wouldn't deny it at this point in trial, maybe, but he would say it happened. It was consensual. And if they could, I guess, show some evidence or some witnesses to back that up, maybe they have a little bit of a case.
maybe. I mean, I doubt it would be a very good defense, it
Right.
would seem. But yeah, I think it'll be a combination of some things didn't happen, right? We
Right.
know for the one instance with Jay-Z that's come out that's been alleged, there seems to be evidence that people have referred to that the alleged victim wasn't even in the location on the day she claimed. So
Mm.
there may be some allegations where they say this just didn't happen. But the rest, I would assume they were saying they came to a party to have fun. And the fact that it was a large orgy, frankly, it doesn't mean that they were doing anything against their will.
Right. True. Do you
Yeah.
see any challenges that you could predict coming for the prosecution?
Yeah, I think it's going to be this issue of character evidence,
Right.
right? What, they have to provide context to what's going on. And they've brought a RICO case, which is basically they're charging him as if he's the mob. RICO was
Mm.
a statute created to be able to capture all the activities that a criminal organization engages in. And they've alleged it that way. But at the same time, there's going to be an issue of some of the stuff they want to bring out about him really isn't the, relevant to the criminal allegations, and it's
Mm,
just going to prejudice the jury. So I think there's going to have to be a very fine line between, let's stick to the facts, but also in order to understand the context, you need to understand about the freak offs. You need to
right,
understand about how the women were treated afterwards.
right.
Otherwise, they can't make their case.
Yeah. Okay, Brian Koberger, the trial in Idaho. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm so excited for that one. I think this is going to be like the true crime trial of the century.
Now, do you think he did it?
Of course, I think he did it. Right now, I mean, I'm staying unbiased, right?
Mhm.
Because we know in that case particularly, there's a lot of evidence we haven't seen. And there's
Right,
a lot going on behind closed doors that we don't necessarily know about.
right.
But gosh, I mean, you know, right? You turn off your phone at that time of night, your DNA is at the scene. Seems kind of unlikely that that's just all a big coincidence.
Right. But remember watching, I couldn't stop watching the Casey Anthony trial. And we were like, she did it. There's all this evidence. I mean, I guess there wasn't evidence, but there was all this crazy circumstantial evidence that pointed to the fact that she lost this kid and something must have happened to her because of all the lies. And then when you get to the trial and you see Jose Baez come out with that crazy defense and she got off, it was insane.
Yeah. I mean, I still think she did it. I don't know if I can say that, right? But
Of
I
course.
don't, the,
I
the
think
outcome of that
everyone thinks
trial
she did
didn't
it.
change my mind. I think it didn't change most people's minds.
Well,
Um,
yeah. I mean, and on a side note, talking about that, I still never understood if she was going to suggest that the kid, I think she said the kid drowned in the pool and the dad helped her bury the body and the dad was sexually assaulting everybody, abusing everybody. How come no one took the dad to trial?
I,
So I thought that was bullshit. And I couldn't believe that no one besides Nancy Grace was up in arms about the whole thing.
yeah, no, I think it's outrageous what happened. If I had been doing this back then, I would have been, right next to Nancy. And it
Right.
was nuts. And I think I really don't see the Koberger case going this way, but you never know. You
Yeah.
really never know.
Right. So I saw recently there was something in the news where his lawyers had asked to throw something out. I believe it had to do with DNA. Is that correct? Do you know
Yeah.
the facts of that?
Yep, they've asked to throw everything out.
Okay.
So they've said that the DNA was improperly obtained because the FBI essentially went through one of these public DNA databases and identified the DNA relation, I think, to his father. And they
Okay.
say that shouldn't have been done because the FBI violated the terms of service of the website that had that information on it, which is kind of like a big so what, right? So
Right.
maybe the website can sue the FBI if they didn't give them permission, but that's not a Fourth Amendment issue.
Right.
And then they've asked to throw out basically all the other evidence too for various reasons. I watched those hearings. It didn't look very compelling to me, the arguments. But the judge in that case is spectacular and
Oh,
he's hard to read. And he asked both sides some really challenging questions. So I don't think any of that stuff will get kicked, but we'll see.
do you think Brian has a good trial attorney?
I'm gonna withhold judgment on that.
Okay.
I think the arguments made thus far are not particularly compelling by his lawyers,
Got it.
but that's also probably in part because they don't have good arguments to make, right?
Right. That
Every
was my
defense
next question. Yeah.
Yeah, every defense lawyer has to try to get the DNA thrown out. You have
Right.
to. So, but I don't think that the lawyers we're going to see in this particular case are going to be as theatrical or as compelling as some of the lawyers we've seen, like Jose Baez, like, in trying to think of other good examples in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case. I think they're more kind of local attorneys that don't have as much of the theatrics behind them.
Right. Right. Did you watch the Karen Reed trial at all?
I watched some of it. Yeah, I watched some excerpts from that trial. Whoo, that one was
That was a doozy. Did
yes,
you have an opinion on that one when it was happening?
no. I mean, yeah, I had lots of opinions, but I think in a lot of these other cases, I have a very strong opinion about what I think happened there. I don't in that case.
Right.
I felt myself kind of, hearing one witness and saying, oh gosh, clearly she did this.
Right.
And then hearing some other evidence and saying, well, that seems very odd. Why would
Right.
that be the case?
Right. It's
So,
interesting you say that because there were so many circumstances where her attitude, the bizarre behavior, whatever it was, she clearly did it. But then when you look at the facts and these weird, bizarre behaviors of the people in the house that night, and the fact that more damage would have been done with the car, and I mean, it's just like almost common sense stuff didn't match up, and so it was very hard. But here we are, and she's off again. Do you know the detail? Does she have to go back to trial? I can't
I
remember now.
think, I mean, I think they're going to retry her. I don't, it'll be interesting to see because there are so many problems with that case. I think it's a
Yeah,
case that if it had not gotten headlines, they would call it a day after what happened at this point.
yeah,
But I think they kind of have to retry her. And I completely agree with you. This was one where every day I kind of changed my mind because
yeah.
there was such good evidence for both sides in a way that it seemed like she totally did it and like she totally didn't do it at the same time.